Amber leaned against the counter, wiping her hands on her apron, her eyes drifting to the empty booth near the corner window. The diner buzzed around her with the usual clatter of cutlery, sizzling of the grill, and low hum of conversations. Yet, her focus was on one thing, the neatly folded $1,000 bill placed under the empty coffee cup. "Is this for real?" she whispered to herself, glancing around. Her heart raced as a million thoughts swirled in her mind. She picked up the bill, half expecting someone to shout, "Gotcha!" or for a hidden camera crew to pop out and reveal the prank. But the diner remained as it was, busy and indifferent. No cameras, no pranksters, just the lingering scent of burnt toast and the murmur of distant chatter. Amber shook her head, bewildered. Who leaves a $1,000 tip? It had been a long shift, made worse by him. The rude man who had snapped his fingers for every little thing, extra napkins, more ketchup, the steak that wasn't cooked just right. His eyes had held a disdain that burned through her resolve, making her grit her teeth and force a smile each time he barked an order. And yet, this? She flipped the bill over, her pulse pounding. Scribbled in neat handwriting were 2 words: "Thank you." A shiver ran down her spine. Was this his idea of a twisted joke? A way to mock her for putting up with his horrible behavior? She looked around again, half expecting him to be watching from somewhere, a smirk on his face, but he was gone. Taking a deep breath, Amber slipped the bill into her pocket. If it was a joke, she'd find out soon enough. If not, well, her family needed the money more than she needed to question a mysterious windfall. The rest of her shift passed in a blur, and by the time she clocked out, the strange encounter was still gnawing at her. What kind of person would leave a massive tip after treating her like dirt? It didn't make sense. It wasn't until the next morning, when a sharply dressed man knocked on her apartment door, that she realized the tip had been more than just money. "Miss Amber Collins?" The man's voice was smooth, his posture immaculate. "I'm here on behalf of Mr. Kane. He requests a meeting." Amber's heart stuttered. "Mr. Kane? You mean the man from the diner?" The man's smile didn't reach his eyes. "Yes, the very same. He has an offer for you." Amber stood in front of the gleaming glass building, her reflection staring back at her from the entrance. The place screamed wealth and power, intimidating enough to make her knees wobble. She pulled her jacket tighter, as if that would shield her from the overwhelming sense of being completely out of place. "What am I doing here?" she thought, hesitating on the marble steps. She had spent half the night replaying the events of the day before, trying to understand why a rude stranger would leave such an outrageous tip and then send his assistant to track her down. But here she was. Gathering her resolve, she pushed through the revolving doors, stepping into the lobby. The space was vast, every surface polished to perfection, from the grand chandelier that hung from the ceiling to the sleek black reception desk manned by a stern-looking woman in a tailored suit. Amber approached, clutching her purse like a lifeline. I'm here to see Mr. Kane," she managed, her voice barely above a whisper. The woman's expression softened slightly. "Miss Collins, he's expecting you. Please follow me." Amber was led through a maze of corridors, each one more opulent than the last. Every inch of the place screamed luxury. Expensive artwork adorned the walls, and the plush carpet felt like walking on clouds. They finally arrived at a pair of heavy oak doors. The receptionist knocked lightly before pushing them open. "Miss Collins is here, sir." The man seated behind the desk looked up. For a moment, Amber almost didn't recognize him. Gone was the irritable customer from the diner. In his place was a polished, composed figure dressed in an impeccably tailored suit. His gray hair was slicked back, and his piercing eyes, no longer cold and judgmental, studied her with an unreadable expression. "Thank you, Denise," Mr. Kane said, waving his assistant away. As the doors closed behind her, he rose, extending a hand. "Miss Collins, please, have a seat." Amber remained rooted to the spot, her mind racing. What was this? Why was he being so polite now? Thank you," she mumbled, sinking into the leather armchair opposite him. The chair swallowed her small frame, making her feel even more out of place. There was a long pause as Mr. Kane leaned back, observing her. The silence stretched, thick and uncomfortable, until he finally broke it with a low chuckle. "You're wondering why you're here," he said, and she nodded hesitantly. "You see, Miss Collins, yesterday I behaved terribly. You had every right to throw my food in my face, yet you didn't. You maintained your composure, your professionalism. That's rare." Amber blinked, taken aback. She had expected a reprimand, an explanation, anything but praise. Mr. Kane's gaze didn't waver. Most people, when faced with difficult customers, would react emotionally, but not you. You treated me with dignity and respect, even when I didn't deserve it. That's a quality I value, and it's why I wanted to speak with you. She shifted uncomfortably. "So, this is about the tip?" His lips twitched almost into a smile. "The tip was just a gesture, a token of my appreciation, if you will, but this," he gestured around the room, "is about something much bigger. I want to offer you an opportunity, Miss Collins, a chance to change your life." Her heart hammered. "What kind of opportunity?" Mr. Kane leaned forward, steepling his fingers. "A job. A position that will pay more than you've ever dreamed of, with benefits that will allow you to take care of your family, to never have to worry about money again." Amber's thoughts tumbled over each other. A job? This was insane. "But I'm just a waitress. Why would you—" "You're not just a waitress," Mr. Kane interrupted, his voice firm. "You have the qualities of a leader, patience, resilience, and the ability to think on your feet. My company needs someone like you, someone with heart, someone who won't be corrupted by power." Amber gaped at him. This felt surreal, like something out of a movie. "I don't understand. What kind of job are you offering me?" He paused, considering his words carefully. "I want you to be my personal assistant. You'll manage my schedule, handle sensitive information, and learn the inner workings of my company. But more than that, I want to mentor you, to see if you have what it takes to lead." Lead? Amber's mind spun. She had never thought of herself as a leader. A good employee, sure. A loyal daughter and sister, yes. But a leader? This is a lot to take in," she stammered, her voice wavering. "I mean, I appreciate the offer, but why me? Why not someone more qualified?" Mr. Kane's gaze softened. "Because qualifications on paper don't mean a thing when it comes to character. You have something that can't be taught, Miss Collins, and that's exactly what I need." Amber swallowed hard. "What's the catch?" For the first time, Mr. Kane smiled, a slow, almost sad smile. "There's always a catch, isn't there?" He reached into his desk drawer, pulling out a small, sealed envelope. "Open this when you get home. It will explain everything." Amber took the envelope, her fingers trembling. "And if I say no?" "Then you walk away, and we pretend this never happened," he said simply. "But I think you won't say no, Miss Collins. You're curious, and you're not afraid of a challenge." The air between them crackled with tension. Amber's eyes narrowed slightly. "How do you know that?" "Because," Mr. Kane murmured, his gaze never leaving hers, "you didn't leave when you had the chance." Amber sat on the edge of her bed, staring at the envelope in her hands. She had made it through her shift at the diner that evening in a daze, her mind churning with questions. Now, in the quiet of her small apartment, the reality of the situation crashed down on her. What was in the envelope? What kind of job came with such secrecy? Slowly, she tore open the seal, her breath hitching as she unfolded the crisp letter inside. "Congratulations, Miss Collins. By accepting this letter, you are agreeing to participate in a series of trials designed to test your moral fiber, your decision-making, and your resolve. You will be asked to complete tasks that may seem insignificant but hold great meaning. Succeed, and you will be rewarded beyond your wildest dreams. Fail, and you will lose everything." Amber's pulse pounded. What kind of twisted game was this? The letter continued. "You have 24 hours to make your choice. If you accept, report to the address below. If you decline, destroy this letter and go back to your life. But know this: True change only comes to those willing to embrace it. Her eyes drifted to the signature at the bottom. Jonathan Kane. Amber's thoughts whirled. This was insane. She should walk away. She should forget any of this ever happened. But she couldn't, because deep down, a small voice whispered, "What if this is your chance?" With trembling hands, she picked up her phone and dialed the number at the bottom of the letter. "I'm in." Amber stood outside a nondescript building in the heart of the financial district, clutching the letter tightly in her hand. The air buzzed with the energy of the city, but in that moment, it felt like she was the only person in the world. Her entire body buzzed with nervous anticipation, and her fingers trembled as she pushed the button next to the heavy iron door. Almost immediately, a soft chime rang out, and the door clicked open. Amber took a deep breath and stepped inside. The building's interior was starkly different from the gleaming skyscrapers she had passed. It was dark, almost foreboding, with the narrow hallways lined with closed doors. At the end of the hallway stood a man in a dark suit, his face shadowed by the dim light. "Miss Collins," he greeted her with a curt nod. "I'm Gregory. I'll be overseeing your first test." "First test?" Amber echoed, the anxiety creeping back into her voice. She had no idea what to expect. What kind of test did Mr. Kane have in mind? Gregory's expression was unreadable. "Follow me." They walked in silence until they reached a plain metal door. Gregory turned the knob and pushed it open, revealing a small, bare room. At the center stood a single chair facing a desk, and on the desk lay a plain brown envelope. "Please, take a seat," Gregory instructed. His voice was soft, almost soothing. "This test will be simple, Miss Collins. Inside the envelope is a set of instructions. All you have to do is read them and decide." "Decide what?" Amber asked, narrowing her eyes. Gregory didn't answer. He merely gestured to the chair. Reluctantly, she stepped forward and sank into the cold metal seat, her eyes fixed on the envelope. She hesitated for a moment, then slowly reached out and tore it open. Inside was a single sheet of paper, typed in the same neat, formal font as the letter she had received at home. Test 1. On the desk in front of you are 2 pens, one black, one red. At exactly 12:00 p.m., a man will enter the room and ask for a recommendation. If you believe he deserves a chance, hand him the black pen. If you believe he does not, hand him the red pen. Choose wisely. Amber looked up sharply. There were indeed 2 pens lying next to the envelope, one sleek and black, the other bright red. Her stomach twisted. "What is this?" she demanded, turning to Gregory. "What am I supposed to be recommending him for?" Gregory's face remained impassive. "That is for you to determine, Miss Collins. You have 5 minutes to decide." Amber's heart raced. Decide? Decide what? She didn't even know who the man was. What was at stake here? Was it just a test of her judgment, or did her decision have real consequences? But Gregory wasn't giving her any more information. She glanced back at the pens, her thoughts churning. Why these colors? Was there some hidden meaning? The clock on the wall ticked ominously, each second driving her heartbeat faster. This was ridiculous. How could she possibly make a decision without knowing anything? But that was the point, wasn't it? It was a test, not of knowledge, but of instinct, of character. The door swung open, and a middle-aged man in a cheap suit stepped inside. He looked nervous, beads of sweat dotting his forehead. His eyes darted between her and Gregory before settling on the pens. "Miss Collins, I'm here for your recommendation," he stammered. Amber's pulse pounded in her ears. He seemed desperate, afraid even. But was that enough reason to give him the black pen? What if this was some sort of trap? What if he was dangerous? "Please," the man whispered, his voice barely audible. "I need this chance." She stared at him, her mind racing. It would be so easy to give him the black pen, to offer him the benefit of the doubt. But something in his eyes, there was something dark there, something that made her skin crawl. 3 minutes, Miss Collins," Gregory reminded her gently. Amber swallowed hard. If she chose the red pen, it could ruin this man's life. But if she chose the black and it turned out he didn't deserve it— Her hand hovered over the pens, her thoughts a whirlwind, and then she remembered Mr. Kane's words. True change only comes to those willing to embrace it. What did that mean? What kind of change? For her? For this man? Slowly, deliberately, she picked up the red pen. The man's face fell. Please, he begged, stepping forward. You don't understand. This is my last chance. Amber's grip tightened on the pen. She could feel the weight of her decision crushing down on her. She glanced at Gregory, searching for a clue, but his face was a mask. 2 minutes, he murmured. She looked back at the man. Every instinct screamed at her to switch to the black pen, to give him a chance, but something held her back. I'm sorry, she whispered, holding out the red pen. The man's eyes widened. Disbelief etched across his face. For a moment he looked like he might argue, but then his shoulders slumped. He took the pen from her, his hand trembling. Thank you for your time, he mumbled, turning and walking out of the room. Amber's breath left her in a rush. Had she just ruined someone's life? What if she'd made the wrong choice? Her hands were shaking, and she clenched them in her lap, fighting the rising panic. Gregory stepped forward, his expression unreadable. Why did you choose the red pen? Amber stared at him. I don't know, she admitted. It just felt right. Gregory's eyes flickered, and for the first time she thought she saw a hint of approval. Interesting, he murmured. Very interesting. Before she could respond, the door swung open again, and the man reappeared. But something was different. His shoulders were straight, his expression calm and composed. He strode back into the room and handed the red pen to Gregory. Well done, Gregory said softly. Both of you. Amber blinked, confusion swirling. What's going on? The man turned to her, a small smile playing on his lips. It was a test, he explained gently, of your instincts. The red pen wasn't a rejection. It was a sign that you could see beyond the surface, that you could judge a situation based on what you felt, not what you saw. Amber's mouth dropped open. You're not really— The man shook his head. No, but you passed. Most people choose the black pen out of pity or fear. You didn't. You stood your ground. Amber turned to Gregory, still reeling. What does this mean? It means, Gregory said, his smile widening ever so slightly, that Mr. Kane was right about you. You're stronger than you think, Miss Collins. Welcome to the next level. And with that, he handed her a new envelope. Amber opened the new envelope with the trembling fingers, bracing herself for whatever insanity would come next. Congratulations, Miss Collins. You've passed the first stage. Your next test will take place tomorrow at 9 a.m. sharp. Be at the following address. Come alone. And remember, trust your instincts. The address listed was in a part of the city Amber had never been to, an industrial area filled with abandoned warehouses and empty lots. Her heart sank. Whatever this test was, it was going to be even more dangerous than the last one, but she would be there. Because now, more than ever, she needed to know, what did Mr. Kane truly want from her, and how far would he push her before she broke? With a deep breath, Amber folded the letter and put it in her pocket. Tomorrow, she would find out. Amber arrived at the desolate industrial area just before dawn, the sky still painted in shades of early morning blue. The buildings loomed around her like silent sentinels, their windows dark and empty, their walls streaked with rust and grime. A thick fog hung low over the ground, shrouding the street in a blanket of eerie silence. She glanced at the address one last time. It led her to a massive warehouse, its heavy iron doors slightly ajar. A strange, uneasy feeling settled in her gut, but she shook it off and stepped inside. The interior was dark and cavernous, the air thick with the scent of dust and oil. She strained her eyes, trying to make out shapes in the gloom. Somewhere ahead, she spotted a single overhead light casting a weak, flickering glow on a table and 2 chairs. A figure stood beside it, a man, dressed in a simple gray suit, his face hidden in shadow. Miss Collins. He greeted her, his voice echoing softly through the empty space. "Welcome." Amber swallowed, forcing herself to stay calm. "Who are you?" The man stepped forward, the light catching his features. He was middle-aged, with sharp, calculating eyes and a neatly trimmed beard. His expression was neither welcoming nor hostile, just watchful. "I'm just an observer," he said, "here to monitor your progress." "My progress?" she repeated, frowning. "Yes," he replied smoothly. "You've proven yourself capable of making tough decisions, but this test will be different. It's not about choosing between two options. It's about trust and seeing just how far you're willing to go." Amber tensed. "What do you mean?" He gestured to the table. On it sat a small sealed box, about the size of a shoebox. There were no markings on it, nothing to indicate its contents. Next to the box was a digital timer counting down from 15 minutes. "This is your second test, Miss Collins," the man said calmly. "Inside this box is an object that holds significant value to someone. You have 15 minutes to decide whether to keep it for yourself or deliver it to the address inside. Choose to keep it, and you walk away with a reward. Deliver it, and you'll be asked to do something much harder." Amber stared at the box, her pulse quickening. This was crazy. "What's in the box?" "That's for you to discover," the man replied, a faint smile on his lips. "But I will tell you this. The decision you make today will have real consequences. Someone's life will be affected." Her heart lurched. Real consequences? Was he serious? "What happens if I fail?" she asked, her voice unsteady. "Failure, Miss Collins," he murmured, leaning closer, "is simply not an option." With that, he stepped back, folding his arms across his chest. Amber's gaze shifted to the timer. 14:32, 14:31. The seconds were slipping away, and her mind raced. What did he mean by real consequences? Could something in this box actually impact someone's life? And if so, how? "Tick-tock, Miss Collins," the man murmured. "The clock is ticking." Amber gritted her teeth. This was insane. How could she make a decision without knowing what was at stake? But as the seconds continued to slip away, she realized she didn't have time to second-guess herself. She took a deep breath and reached for the box. Her fingers hovered over the seal, trembling slightly. With a sharp tug, she broke it open. Inside was a small velvet pouch and a note. Her eyes narrowed as she pulled out the note and unfolded it. "This key belongs to a safe. Deliver it to the address on the slip below. It holds something irreplaceable. Or keep it, and the safe's contents will be yours. Your choice." Amber's breath caught. A key? To a safe? She glanced at the velvet pouch and hesitated. Slowly, she tipped it over, letting the small metal object drop into her palm. It was an ordinary key, no special markings, no indication of what it opened. But it felt heavy in her hand, as if laden with invisible weight. She unfolded the second slip of paper and read the address. It was a residential location, a small apartment complex on the other side of the city. Her mind whirled. What could be in the safe? And more importantly, who did it belong to? 10 minutes, the man said softly. Amber's gaze snapped back to him. His eyes were on her, dark and intent, as if reading every flicker of doubt in her mind. What did he expect her to do? Take the key and walk away, or deliver it? If she kept the key, it would be hers. Whatever was in that safe would belong to her. But what if it was something important? Something someone needed desperately? The clock ticked on. 9:30. 9:29. Amber took a step back, clutching the key tightly. She couldn't do this. She couldn't make a decision without knowing what she was deciding on. But that was the test, wasn't it? To see if she would take the easy way out, or if she would take a leap of faith. "Make your choice, Miss Collins," the man murmured. "Time waits for no one." With a sudden burst of determination, Amber turned and strode toward the door. "Where are you going?" the man called after her, a note of surprise in his voice. Amber didn't look back. "To deliver it." She heard the man laugh softly. "Interesting." But she didn't stop. She pushed through the door and out into the cold morning air, her mind racing. She had no idea what she was doing, but something deep inside told her this was the right choice. She had to deliver the key. She had to see this through. She flagged down a cab and gave the driver the address, her heart hammering wildly as the city blurred past. By the time they arrived, the timer in her pocket read 1:15. 1:14. Amber leapt out of the cab and sprinted up the steps of the apartment building. She scanned the numbers, searching frantically for the right door. 4B. There it was. Without hesitation, she pounded on the door, gasping for breath. A moment later, the door creaked open, and a frail old woman peered out. Her eyes were wide, her face pale and lined with worry. "Can I help you?" she asked softly. Amber held up the key, her chest heaving. I'm supposed to give this to you." The woman's gaze dropped to the key, and for a heartbeat Amber thought she might collapse. "You found it," she whispered, tears welling in her eyes. "Oh, thank God, you found it." Amber blinked, confused. "What do you mean?" The woman reached out, her hands trembling as she took the key. This unlocks the safe where I keep my late husband's belongings. I lost it weeks ago, and I thought I'd never see it again." Amber's heart lurched. "Your husband's belongings?" The woman nodded, a small, grateful smile spreading across her face. "Yes, it holds all the letters he wrote me before he died. They're the only things I have left of him." A wave of relief and shock crashed over Amber. Letters. Just letters. But to this woman, they were everything. I'm glad I could return it," she murmured, stepping back. "Wait!" the woman called, her voice breaking. "Who sent you? How did you find it?" But Amber just shook her head, tears burning her eyes. "It doesn't matter. Just take care of them." And with that, she turned and walked away, her heart lighter than it had been in years. As she stepped out into the sunlight, her phone buzzed. A single message from an unknown number. "Well done, Miss Collins. You've passed the second test. The next stage awaits." Amber smiled faintly. Bring it on. The next tests were a whirlwind of impossible choices, pushing Amber to her limits in every conceivable way. One test forced her to confront her own past traumas, digging up memories she'd long since buried. Another challenged her to negotiate a high-stakes deal in the middle of a busy stock market floor, pitting her against seasoned professionals. Each time, Amber barely made it through, coming out the other side bruised, battered, but not broken. And each time, Mr. Kane's shadow loomed closer. He never appeared in person, but his presence was felt in every test, every cryptic note and instruction. It was as if he were everywhere, watching her every move, waiting for her to fail. But Amber didn't fail. She fought, clawing her way through each challenge with sheer determination. She had come too far to give up now. Too much was at stake, not just for her, but for her family. The money from the tests had already paid off their debts, secured better care for her mother, and given her brother a chance at a real future. She couldn't quit now. She wouldn't. And then came the final test. Amber stood in front of an imposing mansion on the outskirts of the city, her nerves coiled tight. The grand estate loomed above her, its windows dark and silent. This time, there was no welcoming figure, no friendly assistant to greet her. Just a single door, slightly ajar, inviting her into the unknown. She hesitated, her mind racing with 100 doubts. What would Mr. Kane throw at her now? What was left to test? She'd faced her fears, made decisions that risked everything, and proven herself time and time again. What more could he possibly want? Swallowing hard, she pushed the door open and stepped inside. The interior was breathtaking. Polished marble floors, high ceilings adorned with crystal chandeliers, and walls lined with priceless artwork. But the grandeur only made her feel more uneasy. This was no longer a game. This was the end. Her footsteps echoed softly as she made her way through the foyer, her senses on high alert. And then she saw it. A single envelope lying on a table in the center of the room, marked with her name. Amber picked it up, her hands trembling slightly as she tore it open. "Welcome, Miss Collins. Your final test is simple. Find me." She frowned, scanning the letter for more details, but there was nothing else, just those 3 words. Find him? Where? How? The mansion was enormous, with dozens of rooms and corridors. It would take hours to search every corner. But as she turned the letter over, she noticed something else, an imprint, faint but visible. She held the paper up to the light, her breath catching as she made out a series of numbers. A code. Amber's pulse quickened. She glanced around, her eyes landing on a nearby door marked Library. Without a second thought, she crossed the room and pushed it open. The library was vast, filled with towering shelves crammed with books of every size and color. In the center stood an old-fashioned wooden desk, and mounted on the wall behind it was a safe, its surface gleaming in the dim light. Amber stepped forward, her heart pounding. Was this it? The final test? Her fingers fumbled as she entered the code from the letter. There was a soft click, and the safe swung open, revealing nothing, just an empty, hollow space. Her stomach dropped. Had she gotten it wrong? But then she saw it, a tiny switch hidden in the back of the safe. She pressed it, and with a low whirring sound, the entire wall slid aside, revealing a hidden passage. Amber's breath caught. She glanced back, half expecting someone to stop her, but the mansion remained silent. This was it, the final stage. With a deep breath, she stepped into the passage, her footsteps echoing softly on the stone floor. The walls closed in around her, the air thick and musty. But she kept going, her determination propelling her forward. After what felt like an eternity, the passage opened into a small, dimly lit room, and there, sitting at a simple wooden table, was Mr. Kane. He looked up as she entered, his expression calm and composed. For a moment, neither of them spoke. Then, slowly, he smiled. "Congratulations, Miss Collins," he murmured. "You've made it." Amber stared at him, her emotions a tangled mess of confusion, anger, and relief. "What is this?" she demanded, her voice shaking. "What do you want from me?" Mr. Kane leaned back in his chair, studying her thoughtfully. "I wanted to see if you were worthy," he said quietly. "Worthy of the truth." Amber's heart raced. What truth? He gestured to the chair opposite him. "Sit. It's time you learned everything." Amber sank into the chair, her eyes never leaving his face. Mr. Kane steepled his fingers, his gaze intense. "Everything you've been through, every test, every challenge, was designed to prepare you," he said softly, "to push you to your limits, to see if you could handle the truth." "And what truth is that?" Amber whispered. Mr. Kane leaned forward, his voice dropping to a murmur. "I'm dying, Miss Collins. I have less than a year to live." Amber's breath caught. "What? But—" "And I have no one," he continued, cutting her off gently. "No family, no heirs. My entire life has been spent building this—" He gestured around them, his eyes sad. "This empire, but what good is it if there's no one to carry it on?" Amber's mind reeled. You want me to—" "Yes," Mr. Kane said simply. "I want you to take over, to be my successor." The room seemed to spin around her. This was insane. "But why me?" she whispered. "I'm just a waitress." "You're more than that," he interrupted softly. "You have integrity, resilience, and a strength of character that most people can only dream of. You've proven yourself time and time again, Miss Collins. You're exactly what this company, and the world, needs." Amber shook her head, disbelief coursing through her. I don't know what to say." "Say yes," Mr. Kane said gently, "and everything I have will be yours. The company, the wealth, the power, all of it. You can change the world, Amber. Make a real difference." She stared at him, her heart pounding. Could she do this? Could she take on such an enormous responsibility? But then she thought of her family, her mother, her brother, thought of all the people she could help, all the lives she could change. Slowly she looked up, meeting Mr. Kane's gaze. "Yes," she whispered, "I'll do it." Months passed in a blur of activity. Amber was thrust into a world she had never imagined: board meetings, high-stakes negotiations, and complex financial deals. But through it all, Mr. Kane stood by her, guiding her, mentoring her. And then, just as suddenly as he had entered her life, he was gone. He passed away quietly, leaving everything to Amber. Now, as she stood in the grand office that had once been his, looking out over the city skyline, Amber felt a strange mix of sadness and hope. She had lost a mentor, but she had gained something so much more: a purpose. Taking a deep breath, she turned back to the desk where a single envelope lay waiting for her. For my successor. The real test begins now. Amber smiled softly, tears glistening in her eyes. "Bring it on," she whispered. And with that, she stepped into her new life, ready to face whatever challenges lay ahead. If you found Amber's story as gripping and inspiring as I did, don't forget to hit the like button and share it with your friends. What did you think about the twists and turns she faced? Leave a comment below and let me know your thoughts. And if you want to see more stories like this, make sure to subscribe and click the notification bell so you never miss another captivating tale. We have plenty of exciting narratives coming your way, filled with suspense, transformation, and powerful life lessons. If you're looking for more stories of courage, resilience, and unexpected change, check out our other videos. Trust me, you won't want to miss the journey of other characters who, like Amber, discovered their strength when they least expected it. Stay tuned for more, and remember, sometimes the most ordinary moments can change your life forever. Until next time, keep believing in the power of choice.